Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. And as more people join, I'd like to share a music video on Struck by Safety called Another Set of Eyes from one of our panelists today, Jay Hokut with UCOR Construction.
When you drive your truck, you know you got to beware for the unseen hazards that are always there. You've got to take your time, you got to use your mind. You're gonna need some help. Another set of eyes, another set of eyes will prevent struck by. You have to realize that when you're gonna back up or you're in tight quarters, always use a guide. Now when you're backing up, you won't always see things in your blind spots. Another struck by opportunity. You gotta take your time, you've got to use your mind. You're gonna need some help. Another set of eyes, another set of eyes will prevent struck by. You have to realize that when you're gonna back up or you're in tight quarters, always use a guide. Help prevent struck by. Always use a guide. Another set of eyes.
All right, thanks, Jay, for that. And I am now going to pass it over to Brad Sant, who is one of our moderators today and Senior Vice President of Safety and Education with the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, or ARTBA. Brad, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jess. And welcome everyone to the National Stand Down to Prevent Struck By Incidents. Just by way of background, this National Stand Down began as a project with the NIOSH Construction Sector Council and the work group that's dealing with struck by incidents. And so we welcome you here today, and we hope that you will help us to continue to help this National Stand Down to grow. My co-chairman and co-host here today is Alanna Klein. She's the product director for construction energy and risk control services with Liberty Mutual Insurance. And you'll hear from Alanna a little bit later as she will moderate the questions after our panelists give their introductory remarks. So we have some wonderful panelists here today, national leaders representing different sizes of contractors that are going to help us understand a little bit better how to deal with struck by incidents and also give us some ideas of how you can set up and perform your own stand downs. So we're going to begin with Jay Hokut. He is a program manager with Oak Ridge Construction Heavy Equipment, UCOR, and he's been that program manager with UCOR for 35 plus years. You heard him in the introductory video. He has been in management and safety for 13 years and with the Army, U.S. Army Sergeant First Class veteran. He's a certified safety professional with the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, special government employee supporting OSHA with volunteer protection program, site evaluations, and recertifications, as well as a certified well driller and a safety trained supervisor, STS, also a BCSP certification. So Jay will be first. Following Jay, we're going to hear from Reese Fortin, who's the Director of Health and Safety and Environment, a district manager with Sundt Construction. And since graduating from Fresno State in 2007 with a bachelor's degree in safety, Reese has dedicated her career to engaging, mentoring, and inspiring people to truly value safety. Her diverse experience spans several industries such as manufacturing, healthcare, and construction. She's led dozens of safety professionals and hundreds of construction projects from California to Texas. Currently, she guides teams in constructing building projects in the Southwest region and is a key player in managing corporate safety policies and initiatives for Sundt Construction. where she has been a proud employee owner for nearly 5 years. Reese holds numerous safety credentials from the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, CSP, ASP, CHST, STSC, and is a longtime member of the American Society of Safety Professionals. An active participant in her local AGC safety program. She was recognized in 2020 as a top professional under 20 and under 40 by ENR. So we're excited to have Reese. Following Reese, we're going to hear from Richard Wittlinger. He's the Director of Safety with J.D. Eckman Incorporated out of Pennsylvania. And he works there as a heavy highway and bridge contractor. That's J.D. Eckman. He's been there for 16 years. And prior, he worked for 18 years for H.L. Wicker Excavating, located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. 14 years as a heavy equipment operator and 4 years as the safety training coordinator before J.D. Eckman. He's a graduate of Lamster Strasburg High School and a Willow Street Vocational Technical School. And finally, we wrap up with Steve Spaulding, the Vice President and National Environmental Health and Safety Director with Turner Construction. And Steve has spent 20 plus years in the industry with experience and has served Turner in various capacities, including environment, health, and safety, project engineer, superintendent, financial cost engineer, and laborer. So Steve's been around the industry quite a bit. He also leads training in environment, health, and safety for Turner's annual construction management training program for local, minority, and disadvantaged businesses. Steve has received the certification CHST in Construction Safety and Health Technician and CES, Certified Environmental Specialist. He received his BA in Psychology from Marshall State University and an MBA from Thomas More College. So there's all of our presenters right up front. We're going to turn the time over to them. We're going to start with Jay. But before we do that, we want to let you know that there is a lot of information. What we did this year, for the past 4 years, as we prepared these national stand-downs, we have developed a lot of materials everywhere from highway struck by, falling objects, working around cranes and oscillating equipment. And we really felt like we needed to get this information out. We've developed it and we want to share it so people can use it. It's all top quality information and it's all free of charge. And so it's held on the CPWR's website. There's a page for the stand down and for all the struck by materials where you'll find things like toolbox toxes and infographics, job site signage, webinars, videos, research and data, PowerPoint slides. You see the list there. And not only are these CPWR and NIOSH materials, but also a lot of the participants in the NIOSH NORA Construction Sector Council have donated and volunteered their materials and put them up on the website. So great information. Go there and take advantage of it once you finish the stand down today. So let's now turn the time over to Jay and get started with our webinar.
Thank you, Brad. Really appreciate being here. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I really enjoy what CPWR does and NIOSH and the CDC in order to help prevent struck bys. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about some safety tips when it comes to construction heavy equipment and preventing struck bys. One of the most important things you have to have is a plan, and you have to work that plan. Step one, develop your plan and utilize work control documents such as a scope of work, the equipment you're going to be using, how you plan on conducting your work. Then you identify the hazards. And of course, we all know that once we have identified hazards, we typically will create a JHA that allows us to document that and brief our crews before we begin work. And then implement the controls that we've identified in that job hazard analysis that work with the scope of work and the work control documents that we've created. And those hierarchy of controls can be anything from substitution or elimination to engineering controls, administrative, and of course, last but not least, providing PPE. Then we got to perform the work. And probably the most important part of having a plan is to work the plan. Follow the plan that's written. You put your specialists together, decide how you're going to do things, and then that's how we do the work. Making changes, by the seat of the pants or willy-nilly in the middle of performing a project is not the safest and most effective way to do things. And that's why we have to monitor the plan success throughout its evolution and never fear of stopping. stop and say, hey, hang on a minute, this isn't working the way we want it to. So plan the work and then work to plan. And of course, one of the probably the biggest things we should always do is provide a safe work area. And in construction business, we do that by establishing work zones, making sure people are outside of swing radiuses, outside of line of fire, are not put in positions to where they can be a struck by casualty or victim. We erect barricades, and barricades can be something as easy as a person standing there saying, hey, don't go any further. Or it can be something as elaborate as a fence with privacy shielding or concrete bouncers. There's a lot of things we can do to erect barriers to prevent people from walking in our area when we're working. And then provide instructional and danger/warning signs. You know, what PPE is required when I go into an area? Is that identified for me? Those are very important signs to have. How dangerous is it? You know, just saying warning may not be good enough. Hey, warning, falling objects, hard hats required. You know, those are the things we want to make sure everybody knows. And something we've done a lot lately is traffic control plans. In all of our projects, we have a major traffic control plan for the area, but then we also do individual traffic control plans for the projects so that we've identified the potentials for struck by. We've identified those hazards that maybe we can mitigate ahead of time, you know, by controlling the flow of traffic. So traffic control plans are just an excellent tool. Employee engagement. One thing we do at UCOR probably better than most everything is our employee engagement. We encourage our employees to pause, stop work. If they see something, we want them to say something, then we want them to do something. It's not just a slogan. We applaud people when they stop work and say, hey, we're not comfortable doing this, or hey, wait a minute, you know, is this the right tool? Or we should use more PPE. So it's very important to get your employees to stop and pause work and make that a behavior that happens all the time. We utilize local safety improvement teams. Those safety improvement teams are created for the employees, by the employees, and they go out and they're looking at things and they're making suggestions and they're telling management, hey, this needs to be a little bit safer. We'd like to do this. What do you think? They look after each other. We have a safety observation program that creates a peer checking system to where we'll look at what they're doing, and then somebody will say, hey man, don't forget to put your glasses on, or hey, keep your eyes on the path, or hey, you did a great job making sure you're wearing your PPE. That's why it's very important as far as employee engagement goes to get that information out there and applaud people for what they're doing right. Utilizing spotters. While OSHA doesn't necessarily say spotters are required, it is a recommendation. There isn't any definitive programs available, but I would recommend that everybody consider developing a program, have program ownership. It belongs to a subject matter expert or a safety professional, provide training. That includes classroom, exams, hands-on demonstration. I mean, there's several different types of equipment out there, and all the hand signals aren't the same. So one spotter doesn't fit all. It's very important that we teach our people how to provide signals correctly. Something that's worked very well for us is our safety spotter checklist, and that allows the spotter and the driver of the vehicle, or the spotter and the operator of that piece of equipment, to walk down the area and say, hey, here are these hazards, or hey, I don't like that slope, or wow, look at that overhead line, we need to be careful. And let's just confirm what our hand signals are. Hey, are you qualified to operate that piece of equipment? Those are verifications we need to make. And this is performed as a team. It's something we like to call a safety conversation that they have before they perform their work. And last but not least, technology. Technology is a big thing. We utilize backup cameras, proximity sensors, work zone sensors, and telematics. And all of these things allow our people to operate their equipment safer, give warnings when they're in areas where there's heavy equipment moving around, And the telematics, especially for our GSA vehicles, our government vehicles, allows us to see if we have any hard braking issues or rapid acceleration things, and that we may need to address and change in the future. And now I'm going to hand it over to Reese.
Excellent. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. And first thing I want to share with you in my little short time here is a very important concept about planning for struck by prevention. The earlier, the better, as far as the project life cycle is concerned. When we're still in the design phase, that's the time to really be looking at our job and how it's going to be put together to assess what type of risk we're going to have, including struck by. So just a cool concept to share. Something interesting about our project HSE plan, every time we start a new project at Sundt, we create a project HSE plan. And in that plan, we have, as you can see here, a lot of sections that address struck by prevention. It's not just some struck by prevention program, but it's incorporated. Struck by prevention is incorporated in all of these various programs that we address for each project. And we get specific in that plan about exactly what we're doing on that site to control these items. A neat concept to share is designing out the risk of struck by. We're really looking hard at each project. When we get to that project safety plan, we look and see, is there a way that we can design out some of the risk of this project? So here's a great example right here in this photo. You can see a prefabricated duct bank called Ready Duct. That's the company that is making those. It's just one really good example of how we can design out the risk of struck by. We can limit the amount of equipment and movement on site just by doing something simple like that. A couple other ideas for preventing struck by is installing sleeves or embeds before we go to pour concrete, or prefabricating complete units like bathrooms or rooms altogether. Those are all great practices that can really help us prevent struck bys. Now, some very unique things that we're doing at Sundt to prevent struck by. We have incorporated into our THAs, which is what a lot of people call PTPs or JHAs. It's our daily safety plan that our crews use to plan their work and their activity. In that THA, it's controls based. We've got what you can see here is our sticky wheel. It's got our fatal 8 of the most common types of hazards we come across at our work here at Sundt. And when a worker goes to fill out their THA for the day, it's controls based, and it's going to ask them, are you doing anything involving lifting or built at heights? And if they are, then it'll open up a subset of specific controls. The next very interesting thing that we're doing at Sundt to prevent struck bys are something called sticky walks. So sticky stands for the stuff that can kill you. And we do a weekly sticky walk by each one of our operations employees, whether it's a superintendent, PM, safety, even our CEO and our senior executives are required to do at least one sticky walk per month. And those sticky walks, we've got 8 of them, each modeled after one of our fatal 8. So we've got a stuff that's built at height sticky walk, a stuff that's built underground sticky walk, so on and so forth. As of now, since October 1st, we have completed over 4,000 assessments of struck by controls so far this year. So that is very exciting, and I will show you further what that looks like. We have an app. You can see on the left side of the screen what it looks like, just a little screenshot of our app. This is a sticky walk for stuff that's built at heights. And one of the major struck by exposures we have in our industry is dropped objects. And you can see here, these are controls and corrective actions for dropped object protection. And as our personnel are using this app to do their sticky walks, and they're putting in these controls or lack thereof, all that data goes through Power BI and comes out on some really cool dashboards, which you can see on the right side of the slide here. That is a little snippet of one of our dashboards showing that we have had 125 corrective actions for dropped objects since October 1st. So you can see we're doing some pretty innovative things with data so that we know we have a real picture of what we're doing at Sundt, and we can go do something about it. And thank you for having me today. I will turn it over now to Richard with JD Eckman.
Thank you, Reese. Good afternoon, everyone. This slide will show some of JD Eckman's where our core market is and who we work for as a heavy highway, road, and bridge construction company. One of the first things that we did to address serious injuries, which include the struck by type injuries, is develop a process to be used during our morning huddles. So this is titled Process Towards Zero Accidents. So what we asked our field supervision to do was to pick the top 3 hazards of whatever the work is that they were doing. Of those hazards, develop controls or list the controls for those hazards there and talk about those things with their crew members before their shift would start. And then at some point, either during the day or in follow-up the next day, someone would do an evaluation with how the day went or that facet of work went for that day. So this is all done electronically. Here now our field supervision use iPads and they have access to this form, and they're required to fill one of those out on a daily basis. Another thing that we added later on is a safety observation checklist. This was really designed to encourage positive recognition through our processes. So there's several fields there that our field supervision could look through and then check off and then list some of the observations that they had during the course of the day. And they could list the person's name there, and then that person, they would indicate whether the person should get recognition or not. And if they would, we give out things like our own corporate apparel or gift cards, things of that nature. One of the biggest successes that we had in dealing with injuries here at JD Eckman is the use of our own safety bulletins. And I'll try to zoom in here for you. This over. Hopefully you all can see that, but at the top of the list, there's a chart where we track things like OSHA Focus 4, the employee's tenure. We rank the injury 3 ways. It's either a minor thing, moderate, or severe. So we're tracking things that way, and we'll do different things depending on what that data tells us. But when I say successful is our people really appreciate this information a lot more than like a canned toolbox talk because they can truly relate to it there. And if we have a real issue like company wide there, we will do a stand down on that topic. And how we do those things is our upper management all the way up through our ownership. They'll go out to the jobs and lead the stand down. Our safety department will provide them with the information or the resources that they need to hold the talk, but We really try to encourage participation in the events from the top down there, and it's been a well-respected and successful part of our operations here at JD Eckman. Let me zoom back out here. Like Jay had mentioned, we are also using camera systems in our vehicles, our pickup trucks, when they're purchased, and even company cars. They'll all have backup cameras in them. But our larger vehicles, we're using 3 different systems. The Cold Tech system is what we're really going to with our pattern trucks and truck because it is a true 4-camera system. 2 of them are rear mounted there, and it is visible on a LCD panel, which is mounted on the dash that the driver can see there. So those are the different systems that we are using. That's all I have, and I'll pass it on to Steve.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for taking the time to join all of us on the on this call today. Jay and Reese and Richard showed me up with their slides there. I'm just going to talk to everyone today, and thankfully it sounds like a lot of us are doing a lot of the same things around the planning and the documentation. So I was going to walk through a little bit of the processes that we have. Whereas, you know, on our construction sites, you know, we could have construction site with 5 people or a construction site with 3,500 people. So, you know, working through how do we best identify what are the type of struck by potential incidents that could happen on our project site. We do very similarly to what everyone talked about in the planning stages. And I think that's the most important thing for identifying any type of risk that we're discussing. And one of the things that we do is called a job hazard analysis. And that's required prior to the start of anyone working on our project site. They're supposed to fill out a job hazard analysis. It kind of gives like the 50,000-foot view of all of the work activities that are going to be performed while they're on the project site. And that process is supposed to be discussed in a pre-construction meeting with our staff and our team with the subcontracted, our trade partners, prior to them starting work on site, so that we can hopefully get different mindsets, different ideas, different views, and kind of think through the activities and what risks are associated with them. And hopefully they're identified there. So much like Reese said, we can try to engineer out any of the risks or potential struck by type incidents. And if not, then we can plan for what those risks are and put in place what some of the best mitigative measures would be. You know, and that's on a larger level. And then on a daily basis, we too also require a daily pre-task plan. And that's really the activity where the crew lead from each of our trade partner should be discussing the daily activities with each of the workers that will be doing that, and hopefully actively engaging them in those planning activities so that they can talk through each one of their topics for the day. What are they doing for the day? What risks are associated? And what things that they need to do to mitigate those risks. So some of the things that we've put in place, because you know, for us, analyzing, I went back and looked at all of our data over the last few years, and the #1 cause of struck bys for any incident, injury, near miss that was reported for us was for falling or flying objects. So one, we instituted a tool tethering policy so that any material within 10 feet of an edge of a building, leading edge hole, has to be either tethered back to the person or to, you know, if it's material and not a hand tool or something, or back to the building, so that we can try to minimize or stop the falling or flying object in the first place. With our MOOPs, our mobile elevated work platforms, we've created controlled access zones for anyone working like in a scissor lift or an aerial lift, They have to have a controlled access zone, or they have to have all of their tools and materials tethered back so that there's not a potential of dropped or flying objects from that. We've also required that all of those folks working in a MOOP has to have one, it can only be operated outside of the up and down motions. If they're moving forward, back, or sideways, they have to bring it back down to the ground level, or they have to have a designated spotter for each individual MOOP, so that we reduce or hopefully completely eliminate the potential struck by from that moving object. We also have a different policy in place for any mobile elevated work platform that's going to go over 25 feet in the air. So we have a whole set of new rules. If it's going over 25 feet in the air, regardless of what they're doing, they're required to have a full-time, a designated spotter working with them on the ground level that they're in communication with before they move, go up, down, so that we don't have any type of struck by, drop potential, as well as a controlled access zone for those type of activities. We've also instituted the same thing I think a lot have, is 100% high vis across the board on our projects, whether you're indoors, outdoors, and then vest, shirt, jacket, whatever it may be, but whatever your outermost clothing layer is, we will require that to be high vis so everyone's a little bit more visible. We've also not allowed any use of cell phone while operating equipment or while walking or moving as well as no headphones or music. And that wasn't the most popular, I would say, across the board when you're trying to get music, but if you're trying to hear and be aware of all of everything going on in your surroundings on a project site, having 5-6 radios blasting doesn't help when you're listening for backup alarms or somebody saying watch out, or for any kind of emergency notification system. So we stopped the use of those to help hopefully prevent in those type of injuries, incidents as well. And then the safety helmets. This is one that we went about 3 years ago. All Turner staff and labor started wearing the Type 2 or EN 12 492 helmets with a 4-point chin strap attached and secured. Obviously PPE is always kind of the last line of defense. I think what Reese said of trying to engineer out the hazard is always best case scenario, but we still have to wear PPE to protect for those other cases. And moving to the safety helmets is kind of the last line of defense for those others struck by, to really stop the traumatic brain injury type of incidents and injuries, because these new helmets that everyone is wearing allows for front, side, and rear impact protection. And the most important part of all of it to me is that it's got the chin strap attached and secured to keep the hard hat on, or the safety helmet on, if you have a slip, trip, fall, even if it's at the same level, because that's where we see a lot of those incidents and injuries occur, is actually from the secondary hit or the fall after the helmet has already fallen off. For some of the exterior, we've instituted a truck unloading and loading policy, because that's where we saw some of these incidents occurring from, was in the unloading procedures or loading procedures of trucks coming on and off of the job site. So we've now have created controlled access zones on both sides of the truck, so someone couldn't walk behind a truck that's being unloaded, get out of the cab of a truck and walk on the other side, or into the zone where something's being loaded or unloaded. So 10 feet around the truck has to have a controlled access, so no one is allowed in that area except for the person loading and unloading, or someone that he's in communication with, so that they can unload that properly. And then the other big one for us are, we do a lot of inspections, and there's a lot of documentation, and don't want to make everything about paperwork, but the paperwork is really about teaching the process or the behaviors that are needed to understand what the risks are and how we evaluate the risks. So we do daily inspections required for all crane and equipment on our project sites, as well as daily safety inspections from our own staff and safety managers on the site, that also include struck by, slip, fall, strain, caught in betweens, all different types of manual material handling, everything that they're looking at as far as critical safe behaviors from the workforce, so that we can also help train and educate in the process of that inspection. And I think that's the biggest part of that, is in those conversations, those discussions, as we're assessing the risks to try to evaluate where we have struck bys, that all of them should be teaching, coaching, mentoring moments to discuss with the workers, so that we can make them aware of what the hazards associated with the work activities that they're participating in, so that they can learn to identify those hazards and make plans to mitigate for themselves as well. So with that, Alanna, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for sharing all that great information. And panelists, thank you so much for sharing what's worked well for your organization. So now it's time to ask our panelists some questions. As we've discussed today, struck by affects all job sites and is the second leading cause of death among construction workers, and leading cause of non-fatal injuries in the construction industry. During our webinar registration process, we asked our registrants to submit questions they would like our panelists to answer. We'll be asking those questions, and for those of you who did not have a chance to ask a question, please feel free to submit your question in the chat. Panelists, during this session, we'd like you to share what's working well, some lessons learned, and any unique insights you can share with others to incorporate into their program and daily operations. So I'll start off with Reese. How can we help workers recognize that they are in the line of fire and prevent struck by injuries?
One of the best ways to help someone learn or recognize or have hazard awareness is to get them to do it, to learn by doing. One of my favorite examples that we use during our stand downs is to have a non-equipment operator get in the seat of a big piece of equipment, have them close their eyes for a little bit, and then stage a bunch of people around their equipment on the ground, and then have them open their eyes and see how many people they can identify. So just by doing that hands-on activity, you're showing and teaching someone what line of fire is and where they wouldn't want to put themselves. If you can't do hands-on training in real time with an instructor, there is a second best option, and it's something that we call sticky videos here at Sant. It's a 30-minute video that you film showing what you're talking about and explaining how it can hurt or kill you and what to do about it. And so a photo is worth 1,000 words, but a video is worth 1,000,000. So those sticky videos are super effective at showing people what can kill them, what to be aware of.
Great. Thank you for providing that insight. I'm going to turn this over to Richard. Richard, what's the best way your organization has raised awareness of lessons learned after something happens at your company or in the industry as a whole?
And I would say for us, that's been our safety bulletins. One thing that I like about them is the transparency. In it, we talk about the hard facts and the mistakes that may have been made. And in doing so and providing the information that we do and the recommendations that are part of that process, and including photos of what the areas and stuff look like when these incidents have happened. That's definitely gone over very well, and our crews are asking for more and more of them as we go along. So it's been a big plus for us, is just having that format and doing those things.
Steve, do you have anything else to add to that? How you folks have raised awareness of lessons learned and other industry issues?
Yeah, we created kind of in our incident and injury near miss reporting procedures, kind of like an elevated hierarchy of incident or near miss, and we treat a near miss the same way we would an incident, and it's white, blue, orange, red. And dependent upon that level, it's who needs to be notified within the company. And we have a third-party system that all of our alerts go into, and then it automatically emails out. We can add those in there, especially for serious incident and serious incident potential, so that we can notify all of them of those that are happening. And then we set up a phone call with that team and we put together the lesson learned, where the biggest part is not just back down, but we have our EVPs, SVPs, GMs, our general managers, operations managers. So we have from the folks doing it in the field to the leadership of the company, all sitting on doing a lessons learned and understanding where there was a gap or area for improvement, so that we can really build it together and get, you know, a lot of different division of thought. And then we can put together the lesson learned that we can share out with the company.
Great. I'm going to direct this back over to you, Steve, but what has been your most successful pre-planning tool? Just in general, whether it's struck by hazards or safe work practices, what has been most successful within your organization?
Well, I think it, you know, when we started doing like our stretch and flex that goes into the daily huddle, I think that was the most, has really what kind of changed it. The idea of getting everyone around the idea of doing safety with the workforce instead of to the workforce, which was, I think, like the traditional, or at least when I started as a laborer like 24, 25 years ago, was this is safety and we're doing it to you. And so I think when we started doing like the stretch and flex, the daily huddle, the planning all kind of together, where we were engaging the workers to participate in the planning of their work and to identify and identify their activities and what risks were associated with the activities. Because I think anyone just, you know, human behavior is more willing to participate and do a plan that they helped put together than one that someone told them to do every day. So I think just kind of trying to change the mindset of incorporating everyone that's doing the work into the planning, into that pre-task planning process.
That's great. So we're going to move on to work zones and traffic safety, and I'm going to direct this question to Reese. So preventing struck-bys often relies on vests, alertness, alarms. What are some ideas to prevent interactions and increase separations for struck-by exposures and promote the use of engineering?
Yeah, I've looked at sensors and I've looked at neat doodads and doohickeys, but haven't come across anything that's really truly effective in the field at helping with struck-by prevention just as effectively as physical controls. And so my answer to this question is nothing beats a physical barrier. That is one of the best ways that we can prevent struck-by incidents on our job sites, is to put in physical barriers to keep people corralled away from any type of exposures, whether it's an equipment path of travel or a roadway that we're protecting workers from maybe the public drivers. Physical barricades and planning early on where we're going to put them, budgeting for them, because a lot of times they're not cheap necessarily. But that to me is my silver bullet for struck-by prevention most of the time, is some kind of physical barrier that we can put in place. Thanks.
I am going to direct this question to Jay. So you mentioned during your presentation that some of your best practices for preventing struck-by injuries within the work area. What are some best practices for barriers that could be in place for movable or changing conditions on a large project?
So I think the most important thing we have to do is train our people as to, you know, not crossing barriers. We should be able to put up something as simple as a sign and a little rope on a stanchion that says "Do not enter," and they don't enter. Here at UCOR, we have a great cadre of craft, and they will not cross a barrier if we put a rope out. So it starts with the training people to recognize that there is a barrier there. And then, of course, you need to look at what's the scope of work, and then how solid of a barrier do you need? It could be that you need a barrier that's going to help to mitigate some line of fire. when you're sharing, to where you don't have a lot of room. So you put up a physical barrier, you put up a fence, you put up a sheet of metal on the fence, you put a piece of concrete in front of the, it all depends. So every situation is different, but I have to agree with Reese that physical barriers are the best, and you have to train your people to not cross a barrier no matter what.
Yeah, that's very important training right there. Something that goes a long way. I'm going to direct this question to Richard. Reese mentioned a little bit about some of the technology and doodads that are out there on the market. Specifically, what new technologies have you found effective at helping prevent equipment and vehicle-related struck by and crushing injuries?
Okay, there's three that come to mind, Alanna. The first one is halo lights. They're a hard hat light that goes full circumference around the standard style hard hat. Several of our crews have used them, and they really like them. So we do a lot of highway work at night. So lighting is a big key. So they have definitely helped. Some other ones that I thought of for this question that I don't really have experience with, but we just became aware of that they're out there, is guardian angel lights, which they can be mounted on equipment or on a person, and they are a range of different sizes, and they have a micro version that's very small, but it's very bright, and you can do different things with the lighting. They can flash, they can do like a rotation, things like that. And then the last one I thought about is AIG beacons, which is it's Access Innovations Global. They have beacons that can be mounted to the equipment, and it basically puts a halo on the ground that shows, where you would intrude into a piece of equipment's blind spots. So it's new technology that is out there, and we're looking to set up a demonstration for those devices very shortly.
Yeah. And what I'll add to that is there is a lot of emerging technology out there that is directly trying to reduce the likelihood of struck by injuries. And the most important thing that I have found is how it's incorporated into your program, right? Technology can only go so far if it is incorporated in a way where your employees will react and respond. It's the best kind to use for your organization. If it becomes a nuisance, it does become obviously ineffective. So I'm going to direct this question over to Jay. You mentioned the use of traffic control plans during your discussions. Are you utilizing any internal traffic control plans? And if so, how are you utilizing it for pre-planning and for essentially ensuring that your workers are aware of what hazards are going on the job site?
Okay, yeah, we have several levels of traffic control plans. We have 4 major sites out here in Oak Ridge, and each site has several traffic control plans for their given areas. We've just recently developed a checklist for individual projects, individual tasks, as you would say maybe, that they can go through to see, do they need to address traffic control? Do they need to address parking? Where are they going to park their equipment? How are people going to get to and from their cars when they go to a job site? Are we do we need more barricades? Are we closing roads off? So we've kind of taken it down to the micro level. So each individual task now, that's kind of part of the work planning process. Do we need to look at the traffic control plan? And then we have the major traffic control plans for all our sites that talk about parking, We have found that parking has been probably our biggest hazard, because it creates opportunities for people to back into things when people aren't parking just perfectly, especially with larger trucks. So we've started addressing parking in all of our traffic control plans, and we're either creating new parking areas or literally having shuttles run craft to and from places so that we can eliminate the number of people that actually be moving vehicles.
And this is an add-on question, Jay. What kind of training or what type of training and education are you doing around this topic? How are you making your employees more educated behind internal traffic control plans?
Well, traffic control plans become part of our work control development, and all our employees understand work control, and they are involved in the work control planning process. They're involved in the JHA process, and then those work control documents and JHAs are briefed prior to doing work, which means the traffic control plan is briefed. So they are basically trained on their traffic control plan every time they go out to an area to work. That is discussed with them. As far as the development of traffic control plans, that's done by a multidisciplined team that not only includes the craft and the workers, but safety professionals, subject matter experts, project managers, engineers, the facility manager. I mean, everybody has a say in what they think is the best way to keep people safe and prevent struck-bys.
Thanks for sharing that. So I want to bring our attention to an incident that happened last month. 6 highway workers were killed when a vehicle crashed into a construction zone near Baltimore, when a driver was attempting to change lanes and struck another vehicle, causing the first vehicle to lose control and subsequently travel into the work zone. Richard, what can we do to prevent incidents like motor vehicle intrusion into the work zone from occurring? Or anybody else who is a panelist, what can we do to prevent incidents like this from occurring in the future?
Thanks, Alanna. First of all, my thoughts and prayers go out to those who lost loved ones in that incident. It was a horrible thing to see. But I reflect on one of my supervisors. I was part of his morning huddle, and the crew was working out on a roadway taking a single lane. And he said, "We're basically doing the same thing that we've been doing all week, but the difference is the traffic's different." And he couldn't be more correct. So we can, our crews can become complacent with the repetitive work that we might be doing, but what's different each and every day is the traffic that we're exposed to. So for me and our company, feel like we need to continue to work with our government agencies who stipulate how traffic patterns are designed and how they're laid out, and our industry partners in those to develop new ways to do our work. And I think along with it needs to be public awareness. That needs to continue. In Pennsylvania, for example, they have the automated work zone speed enforcement units that are out there. We have 17 across the state, and they're shared amongst PennDOT and the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. But studies are showing that when those vehicles are on our projects, the speeds do go down, and incidents are lessened when they're out there. But there is things that are still happening. So I feel like we definitely have some work to do and need to continue in that endeavor to reduce serious incidents that happen in our work zones.
Thank you for sharing that. So we've received several questions come through the chat. I'm going to get to some of them. For some of the questions that are not addressed, we'll utilize these questions as topics for upcoming Struck By webinars or for potential discussion topics during our Struck By work group. This question is directed at Richard. This person wanted to know, what can you provide some specifics about monitoring systems and how these systems have prevented an incident?
What type of monitoring systems are we talking about? I'm not clear on that.
Do you anything you'd like to share about the topic? Or how you've utilized some of your, I think you mentioned earlier, some of the, well, you talked about Guardian devices. I can go on to the next question. So this question is actually directed towards all the panelists, so speak up if you can. Wanted to know how your organizations incorporate stand downs and stand down rules in conjunction with multiple host sites, so multiple contractors on site.
Can I jump in first?
Sure.
Is that okay? All right. So we've been doing, stand downs on our project sites for over 19 years. This is our 19th year for our Construction Safety Week stand down. So there's a lot of things that go into planning that, and I know that this week is the Struck By stand down. So, trying to get planning for it ahead of time is always the best. We usually start like 3-4 months in advance of putting together what our material is going to be that we're asking everyone to share. And then we put together a checklist for a successful stand down that we provide to all of our staff and our folks so that they can go through and we can, give them advice on finding an area where you can get everyone together. Or if you have a large project where you've got a ton of people that they may not be able to hear or see you speaking, that you can break it out into multiple stand downs so that you get the best audience participation, I should say. And then it's also evaluating who all you want there, right? It's not just the workers on site, but we want to show how important the messages that we're giving are. So we invite our clients, the principals of all of our trade partners. We invite our insurance partners to ours, and we always try to invite OSHA. We reach out to the area director in each of our offices and invite them so that we can show them what we're doing. And hopefully that can also get them to have a word or a message around the topic, so that we can try to break down some of those barriers from that as well, so that we can all be out there to help support the workforce and get the message across.
I'll just quickly add to Steve's comments. He made a great point about getting management and leadership out to your stand downs. It is really difficult when you have numerous job sites in an area or across the country and coordinating who's doing what. So my best practice is having each of my project teams put their events, their stand down events on the calendar, meaning in Outlook, in an actual calendar invite, and sending that invite to anybody they want to invite from senior leadership, because they all live off their cameras, or their calendars. So what a better way than to get on their calendar literally, so they know where to be and when. And if things change, you can update your calendar invite, and you don't have excess messaging going around or miscommunication with people missing their events and things like that.
Yeah, I was just going to add, that's a great point. Like furthering on that is because you got to make it a big deal. If it's just another thing where you send out a bunch of toolbox talks and say, hey, everybody read this at your daily morning or something, that's about the amount of effort that you're going to get back in return from everyone. So the communication, it has to be an event, right? You have to make it an event and kind of big deal the thing so that everybody participates and does it in a manner that we can make the message meaningful to the folks that are hearing it.
Excellent. I've got one more question for the group, and then we'll start closing it down. The question is how do you get people to recognize and talk about near misses? How can we encourage talking about near misses without without shame or without repercussions.
Well, Alanna, I can answer to that. So we have a safety observation card program that everyone can access on their phones. And we encourage anonymous positive observations. We also encourage anonymous things that didn't go quite right. And we track those and we can trend those. And that way people can feel free to talk about something they saw, whether it was somebody standing in a struck by location or a line of fire or not wearing their PPE, and then we can address it in our morning pod meetings after we've seen those observation cards.
My 2 cents on getting people to report near misses. Number one, make it really easy. There shouldn't be any barriers in the way as far as how they report it. And I'd say the second piece is tie accountability to it. At Sant, we have a performance metric of reporting near misses. So our teams, from senior leadership down to the project teams, are held accountable for reporting those near misses.
I was going to add, and I like that. I think for your company, you have to define what near misses you want reported, because that was one of the things that we struggled with as well. Is at what level does the near miss need to get reported? At what height does a hammer falling out of my belt or falling from what? So for your company, I think you first need to define and put together a very detailed structure, just like you would with an incident, of what gets reported and how you report that. And to I think both of their point is, you can't make it punitive, right? The whole idea is that you're looking for gaps and areas of improvements. And so when people report a near miss or an incident, that it has to be a learning moment, like we got this and now we're doing something with it. Kind of like we use very much as I think it was Jay or Richard said, like the safety observations. We have anonymous ways to do it, but making it easy, as Reese said, but making it non-punitive, and then showing that you actually do something to the workers from the information that you received. Then they'll report it so that you're correcting things to give them a better workplace.
Thank you for that. So we did get one more question in, and several other questions that appeared in the chat, but there was a question about some stats associated by causes of struck by. Jess will share links after we are done today with attendees. But that's all we have today. So I wish you a great stand down for the remainder of the week. Again, on the CPWR website, we do have links on our struck by page, which Jess has dropped the link in the chat, where you can utilize these resources as well as continue on with your stand down efforts. Jess, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, thanks, Alanna, and thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing such great information today. Just to remind everyone, we have been recording this, and we will send out the recording along with the PDF of the slides that were shared earlier via email to everyone who registered. We'll also be posting that on the Struck By page that I just dropped in the chat. We also already have past stand down webinars up there, so do go ahead and check those out as well. And thank you everyone for participating. Have a great day.